In the name of the Right Honourable Chris Hipkins.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Prime Minister, does he stand by all of his government statements and actions?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Yes.
Supplementary. Why is his government willing to accept women in New Zealand being paid less than men for doing the same amount of work of the same value?
We're not. This is a government that's very committed to pay equity and ensuring that we do everything we can against sex-based discrimination.
Supplementary question. Why should any New Zealanders believe that his government is committed to ending gender-based pay discrimination when they're unilaterally cancelling pay equity claims for 34 different workforces, covering of tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people, mostly women?
Shame.
Well, what we're doing here is we're making sure that we actually have a process that's more robust, workable and sustainable. We're making the Act and the practice has moved away from what it was intended to deal with sex-based discrimination into a much broader set of issues around labour market conditions and other things. So we're bringing it back to its core purpose, to deal with sex-based discrimination. That's a good thing.
Supplementary question. Why does he think tens of thousands of teachers across New Zealand How does he think tens of thousands of teachers across New Zealand will feel to see their claim for equal pay unilaterally cancelled by his government?
Well, what we're doing is it's important that we have one robust system. We want a level playing field for everyone. We want to make sure that it's not practical to have two systems operating at the same time. We don't want the uncertainty and we don't want the unfairness. But I just say to those teachers, to the unions, to the individuals involved, they can make a claim under the new laws and we fully expect to be making claims under the sex-based discrimination laws under Pay Equity Act.
Supplementary question. Was the budgetary cost of settling pay equity claims considered when the government made this decision?
No, this is about making sure that this legislation is actually fit for purpose and it's actually much more sustainable, workable and less complex.
Supplementary question. Will this year's budget contain any changes to the level of risk, the level of financial risk that the government is exposed to around the settling of pay equity claims?
Well, again, what I'd say is that we've put money aside to make sure the Crown's obligations are met for any pay equity claims that come together under the new law. I admit the changes will actually lead to lower costs for the government. Obviously, those costs will be lower than what has been previously projected, but obviously that is budget-sensitive information to be revealed with the budget.
Why should women across New Zealand...
Order, the Right Honourable Minister Peters.
Mr Speaker, during the Prime Minister's answer, at least 10 members of the Labour Party have been screaming out their own questions, even though they've got supplementaries that they can have allocated to them. Could you please ask them to keep quiet?
What I would just suggest to them is that if they think the questions that are being asked are inadequate, they do take a supplementary at a different time. The Right Honourable Chris Hipkins might like to repeat his question.
Why should women across New Zealand be the sacrificial lambs in this year's budget, being told they have to accept lower pay for the same value work compared to their male counterparts?
Well, that is just, I don't agree with that question and the way that was phrased. That we are staying very committed to pay equity and we're staying committed to sex-based discrimination. We're making sure we're just tightening up this law. If individuals or unions have claims to make, they can make claims under this new law. The government has set money aside to meet those obligations and we will do that. But we want a much more workable, sustainable, robust system.
There is always a degree of robustness between the exchanges of the Leader of the Opposition and the Prime Minister that's somewhat been happening for years, but that barracking has got to stop. It's far too much. It is certainly not inconsiderable. Nor is it rare, reasonable or witty.
Supplementary question. Mr Speaker, does he stand by his pledge to offer an average family with kids an extra $250 a fortnight? If so, why have only 304 families received that support?
What happened to that?
Well, again, we worked very quickly to get money out to working New Zealanders to make sure who are wrestling with the early childcare costs, which are incredibly expensive in this country. We made some assumptions, the IRD made some assumptions on some incomplete information, but having said that, I'm really proud I'm really proud that we've actually got money out to 56,000 working families up and down New Zealand, costing us about $42 million. We'll continue to do that. And I'd just say to that member, if you really cared about lower middle income working New Zealanders, you would have supported the tax cuts.
Supplementary question. Why are only half the number of families he promised extra support getting anything at all under his complicated FamilyBoost scheme?
Well, I'm pleased to say that there are 56,000 families that have applied and received support for their early childhood education costs. Isn't that a good thing? I would have thought the member would have been thankful that actually working families are getting money and support for their early childcare costs. I seek leave to make a personal explanation.
Leave us talk for that purpose. A small outline of the reason.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I seek leave to make a personal explanation to correct an answer to supplementary question to number 1 today.
Leave us talk. Is there any objection?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was asked whether the budgetary cost of settling pay equity claims was considered when the government made this decision. What I should have said was that while Cabinet received advice on a range of considerations, our primary motivation was ensuring the regime would be more robust, workable and sustainable.